was like, ma'am, that's not a baby. And she was like, don't touch my baby. And I said, that is a goat. Oh, sorry.
Oh, are we live?
We're live.
We're live. How about that cigar?
How about that cigar?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode number 108 of How About That Cigar Live. We are live on Facebook, live on YouTube right now. Thank you so much for joining us on the program. If you're listening after the fact on the audio podcast, thank you as always for everybody joining us live in the Drew Estate Cigar Studios. And let's remind everybody about the return of the Barn Smoker program in 2021. They will host 3 barn smokers beginning in the Connecticut Barn Smoker on August 14th and 15th in the beautiful Connecticut River Valley. The Kentucky Barn Smoker will follow in Hopkinsville, Kentucky on October 9th. Finally, the Florida Barn Smoker will take place November 13th and 14th in Claremont, Florida. As always, Barn Smoker attendees will enjoy an immersive deep dive into a variety of unique sensory activations that will focus on Drew Estate brands including Undercrown, Herrera Esteli, Pappy Van Winkle, Hoya de Nicaragua, Florida Sungrown, Tobac Especial, and Acid, while chilling with Drew Estate ambassadors, including company founder and president Jonathan Drew, master blender Willie Herrera, and La Gran Fabrica Drew Estate factory spokesman Pedro Gomez. Multiple ticket options are available for each event. For more info, please visit barnsmoker.com. So episode 108.
108.
It's been, we just had an episode a couple days ago. We had another weekend episode with Jeremiah Marifel. Absolutely great conversation with him. Got some more tears, which we don't go for tears, but you know, sometimes conversations get emotional.
I feel like we're the James Lipton
or the Barbara Walters. If you were a tree, what kind of tree would you be?
Yeah. So our guests should just get ready. Break out the Kleenex box.
So it was so beautiful. Weather was starting to improve around here, and today the high was, I think it got up to 35 degrees and it snowed.
Dude, so yesterday I went fishing with a couple guys on the Mississippi River, right on the border of Minnesota and Wisconsin, so south of the cities, and it was beautiful until about 6:30.
Yeah.
And it went from 65 degrees down to 40 within minutes.
Yeah.
This front came in.
And up here, even the wind kicked up. So we're sitting in the living room, and right behind the house is this deck that spans maybe halfway across the back of the house. So about 28 feet. And all of a sudden this wind kicks up and literally blows all the furniture except for the table, which is heavy. All the chairs and little sofa out there start literally sliding across the deck just from the wind. That was fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, Minnesota, it'll be 70 one day and 30 the next.
I saw the greatest meme about it too. And there's this guy with a fishing pole, and on the end of the pole it says spring, and he's like jerking it up because I hate you, spring in Minnesota.
Well, it's false spring.
It is.
McTavish put something on Facebook this year, maybe last year too, where, you know, the seasons are, you know, winter and then false spring and then second winter and then second false spring or whatever it is.
11sies.
Yeah. So you can never trust the weather around here. Again, we'll touch on it briefly. The Twins got absolutely destroyed by the Angels on Friday. They had some time off. We're starting again tomorrow against the A's.
Fun to watch El Tortuga.
Yeah, Tortuga up there pitching a 46-mile-an-hour fastball and right down the middle for a strike. The guy just stared at it like, what just happened?
Are you for real?
It was beautiful. This perfect rainbow right in the middle of the strike zone.
It was awesome.
I loved it. And he's got this grin on his face the whole time. 46 miles an hour.
I loved it.
And the Wilds are firmly holding on to third place.
Yeah.
In the
mediocre
Western Division. They're playing tonight against the Coyotes. We'll see what happens. Who knows? You know, the Coyotes are firmly holding on to fourth place. We'll see. We'll see
if we can make a switch there.
Yeah. So, guys, let's move into our special main segment of the evening. As always, our special guests on the show are brought to us by Corona Cigar Company and coronacigar.com, the internet's largest and easiest to use virtual cigar store. Corona Cigar Company offers the finest handmade cigars, humidors, and cigar accessories at the absolute lowest possible price. You'll also find unique and limited cigars containing Florida sun-grown tobacco. As a proud American, president and founder of Corona Cigar Company, Jeff Borshowitz believed it was possible to bring cigar tobacco farming back to Florida. At Corona Cigar Company and coronacigar.com, you'll find the best selection anywhere in the world of cigars containing this special Florida sun-grown tobacco. If you live in Florida or are just visiting, be sure to visit any of the great Corona Cigar locations in downtown Orlando, Sand Lake, Lake Mary, and also the Davidoff of Geneva Lounge in Tampa. For more info on all of that, please visit coronacigar.com and floridasungrown.com. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, if you would please welcome to episode number 108 of How About That Cigar Live from RoMa Craft Tobac, Mike Rosales and Skip Martin. Welcome to the show.
Hello. Okay. We need better lighting and sound and visual.
Well, here in the studio, we need better subjects. Just behind the camera. You guys are great.
Yeah. Mike's got great lighting.
Yeah, Mike is all set.
And Skip, we've worked with way worse.
Yeah.
Yeah, you look good.
Yeah, and you guys are back in Austin, so we're not dealing with Nicaraguan internet. We're not dealing with the joys that can come from the internet connections over there. So it's all good, guys. Thanks for so much. Skip, this is your third appearance on How About That Cigar Live. Mike, welcome to the show. Your first time ever on How About That Cigar Live. We understand that you guys just had an epic trip from Nicaragua back to the States. So we know you're a little tired from the trip, but thanks so much for being on.
Yeah, no worries. I think that, I don't know, it's great to be traveling kind of again, right? I think that if you're going to travel and you're going to go down there, make sure that you have a lot of patience and some woosah, kind of rub your ears a little bit, because it's definitely, it's not just like, hey, you show up at the airport and do your thing. It's a process.
Yeah, that's one of the things I was going to ask you guys about, because for anybody who's been fortunate enough to travel down to Nicaragua for a factory tour or for Puro Sabor and things like that, it's it's got to be a lot different now than it was just 14 months ago. So what is it like as far as the hoops that you guys have to jump through, not just with the airport, but with things in town, or what are you guys doing at the factory to sort of stick with whatever local regulations might be?
So I went down in January. So my normal 90-day cycle, I don't have residency, so I only stay down for like 90 days at a time, kind of like my submarine days. So I'll go down. I went down at the end of January. We actually all had COVID at the beginning of January, the end of last year, and then kind of once I got over that, I went down, and then after the 90 days, Mike and Sean kind of came down at the tail end of that, so that we spent a week, and then we all came back together. What's really changed, Nicaragua, the challenge is that you have to have a very specific time sequence test in order to enter the country. So really the only airlines that are flying down there now are Avianca and Copa. So you have to get the test, you have to get it to the airline within 36 hours, and then you have to complete your trip before 72 hours. So that kind of really ties you to a very specific time. And then, getting the test here is not so hard. It's just the timing issue that's hard. And then while I was down there, the U.S. instituted a new rule but in order to come back from Nicaragua, you had to actually have a test to enter the United States. That test, they don't really require that you send it to them before the flight. But the challenge is there's only one place in Nicaragua where you can actually get the test.
The PCR test.
Yeah, so you have to go to Managua, one day, schedule the test, go to get the test the next day, wait for your results, go on one flight to El Salvador, and then take another flight to the U.S. So it takes like 3 or 4 days. to get from Esteli back to Austin.
Wow.
In terms of the factory, we don't obviously, during the heat of it last year, we took some time off and we had some, a lot of precautions, but other than wearing masks and hand washing and things, in our factory, there's no government instituted rules per se. Mensa comes, basically the health department comes, at least once or twice a week. They take everyone's, of course they charge us, but they take everyone's temperature and their heart rate and ask them questions about anybody in their family being sick. They do that at least once a week. And then anyone that displays any kind of symptoms, kind of automatically gets 3 days off. And then if it gets worse, then they get 2 weeks off. So,
okay.
But yeah, I mean, we've only had one person out of the 70 people that work with us that went through that in the last 12 months. So or actually the last 16 months.
Yeah.
So it hasn't affected us much. I mean, if you go to the bigger factories, a lot of them you'll see like the plexiglass dividers. If you see, they have like the thing where you clean your shoes when you enter. They at Noxa, where Esteban's brother works, they actually have like a silkwood shower that you have to go through.
Wow.
It's pretty elaborate, yeah.
So
and
go ahead.
So Skip, we've had you on a few times. I think a lot of our viewers and listeners are familiar with who you are. Mike, this is your first time on the show. Could you let us know who you are, what your position is within the company, and how medicated you have to stay to work with Skip?
Again, it's a lot of Wusal and breathing techniques. No, so my name is Michael Rosales. So it's Ro and Ma. I am 50% owner, business partner with Skip. We started this, back in 2010. So prior to RoMa, I had a cigar brand. It was called Adrian's Costa Rican Cigars, which I was making in Costa Rica out of a factory in Putuscal. And I started that project 2006. And then during that time, I started bringing up tobacco, and we talked a little bit about Raul, which is Esteban's brother, and started bringing up some cigar rollers. And we started putting them into cigar stores and started kind of this program where they could have a roller come in and we could pick out blends and make cigars based on kind of the feedback from the shop. So I would import up tobacco, and then, Raul and then several other rollers would make cigars exclusively for the shop, and then kind of started working on building up kind of, refill bundle kind of programs. And kind of did that between 2000, really kind of started in 2004, but really kind of got it locked in around 2006. And then in 2009, or late 2009, 2010, came across Skip, and then we kind of started really kind of working on making a cigar, which kind of then turned into making kind of Cro-Magnon, and then which turned into RoMa Craft. And so that's kind of me kind of summed up as to, my background and kind of how I kind of got into the industry. I think what I do is, so here in kind of the, I work with the sales guys, which is now just John. We used to have John and Danny, and Danny's now kind of just gone off to do his own thing. But John and I basically take care and manage all of the accounts across the United States. So, brand development, business development, tactical kind of sales strategies that we kind of implement, and customer service and really just trying to make sure that everything kind of here in this office kind of runs well. Basically while Skip is, kind of out of the country. So Skip and I will partner up. So Skip will use kind of like what the, feedback from what I give him as far as the sales, or vice versa, as far as like what's going to be kind of in production based on what the tobacco can, what they're going to put into the production plan. And then kind of we will roll out kind of how we're going to strategically allocate out, all the product that's going to be kind of shipped in, and kind of, make sure that the customers are aware of what's going on and when to expect it and those types of things. So that's what we do here.
Yeah. So I opened up a box of Neanderthal HS for the show tonight, and Garrett and I are smoking those right now. I've got a little bit of Four Roses single barrel also to go along with that. So, Mike, what are you smoking and drinking along with us this evening on the show?
I'm actually smoking an EC Virtue right now. I smoke a lot of the Connecticut's, and I'm actually not drinking anything because I'm afraid I would fall asleep. But I'm actually, I think it's Topo Chico. So
that works.
Yeah, that works great. That works great. Skip, what are you smoking and drinking with us?
I'm smoking a Padron 1926 number 6, I think.
Ooh, very nice.
That we bought at the airport on the way out. We had like 2 huge Ziplocs of cigars and went through them.
Yeah,
a lot of time by the pool. The cigars went fast, so at the airport we picked up another box, and it was a 10-count box. So I figured I was going to try to smoke it all in a couple of days.
Yeah. So, with everything going on, over the last year or so, there's been sort of different ways that companies have been engaging with their retailers and engaging with their consumers and stuff like that. So, what have you guys seen in the, in specifically your marketplace, with your retailers and consumers? And what do you think some of the biggest changes really have been over this last year in the ways that you've interacted directly with retailers and customers?
Well, I would say that because we're not necessarily always on the road. I mean, there was a time when I traveled a lot, and then tried to, especially as my kids have kind of gotten a little bit older, spend more time, kind of more balanced as far as doing one or the other. And but a lot of the times, the relationships that we have always been from the consumer up, right? So we've always spent a lot of time trying to engage with the consumers. And really the retail stores have been a conduit to the consumer base that we kind of create. So again, working from the bottom up. And so, but during COVID, what kind of transitioned was, you saw obviously a lot of people started doing Zoom calls, right? So we took it as an opportunity to really focus on staff, focus on kind of this educational kind of piece as far as kind of working through the lines and what, obviously, because we do everything through phone, when the idea of Zoom kind of came around, which is kind of ironic because Skype and FaceTime and all this other stuff's been around, right? But retailers finally were like, we could do this. So you send them a link, they jump on. You spend, 30, 45 minutes on a call. You can do customer account review. You can go through product lines. You can do all these other things. You can kind of share it with them. And it's really seamless, right? And so that was one of the things that I think early on when we sent Danny and John and everybody was working from the home, like it was really about let's set up your Zoom calls. Who you got? Do we need to be on? How do we kind of manage that? What's funny is there's still some accounts though that don't have computers or still use fax machines or very, very dated in the technology that so you have some challenges, right? Some of these older shop owners that have been around for a long, long time are resistant to change. But for the most part, so where I'm going with that is that you see the guys that are adapting to kind of what's thrown at them as far as not having this interaction with customers and people within the industry. They're adapting and they're changing along with what's being thrown at them. However, there's still a lot of retailers out there that either are resistant to change and or have been on extended lockdowns, and those guys are kind of behind the 8 ball because they've gone longer without really kind of embracing or having the ability to kind of get to use some of the technology that's kind of been thrown out there. So
yeah.
So I really think that one of the challenges is going to be getting and I think people will eventually. They'll come back into the store, right? But it's giving them a reason to come back to the store and making them feel safe in the same thing, So, but I think it'll come back around. I just think it'll take a little bit longer than they think.
Yeah. One of the sort of out in the world of commerce or retail a lot, this phrase that's been thrown around for generations that is I wouldn't call it a controversial phrase. I think it's wrong, but there's this phrase, the customer's always right, which really is not, in my experience, isn't really a true statement. So when it comes to, and Mike, you and I hung out at Tobacco Grove here in the Minneapolis area about a year and a half ago or so when you were in town. And, that's one of the nicest shops in the area as far as a very large selection, great seating area, good staff, things like that. So when it comes to you guys looking at retailers, I think some people have this mistaken idea that if a retailer comes to you and wants to sell your cigars, of course you're going to say, yeah, here's our cigars, carry our cigars. But you have a selective process when it comes to retailers that you're going to partner with. So what do you look for in a retailer when you decide to when you're making a decision whether or not you're going to bring them on as a retail partner?
Man, you're asking for the whole playbook tonight.
Well, I'll start by saying, the customer is always right in the sense that, the customer is the where the demand generation starts. If you don't have people buying your products and using your products or services, then you don't exist as a business. So, if you want to do business with a specific customer, then you have to let that customer define for you how they're going to engage your business, what products they want, how they want them, when they want them, etc., and at what price. The thing is that not every customer is right for every business. Meaning, if you want to do business a certain way, that's your choice. Or if you're a customer that wants to buy things a certain way or buy things at a certain price or in a certain, at a certain kind of quality level, they may not be a good fit for every business, right? So I think people misunderstand the idea. Like if a customer walks into my place, if I go into, for example, what's a good example? If I go into In-N-Out and say, hey, I'm a customer, I'm always right, I want a Whataburger, they're going to say, well, sorry, we're just not a good fit, right? Because we don't sell that here. We sell, shitty fries and, half-assed California hamburgers. We don't sell, delicious Texas hamburgers. So, my point is, for us, and, Mike's going to elaborate more on, how we choose customers. But for us is we know who we are. We know what kind of product we deliver. We know who our end user customer is. And we know the way customers have to kind of interlock with us to service the end customer well. And we know some retailers aren't a good fit, meaning, as a starter, if you don't have a walk-in humidor and you don't have kind of regular staff that really works to understand the product and understand what it is you're selling, if you aren't the kind of place that builds new customers and educates customers, then you're probably not a good fit for us. So it's not as much about us being selective in terms of, gracing stores with the privilege of carrying RoMa. It's more about understanding what kind of stores we do well with, and then as we go through the process of first of all, we don't go out and look for customers to sell to. We generate the demand with the end consumer, like Mike said, and then the end consumer goes to their retailer and says, hey, how come you don't sell RoMa Craft? And, generally, if it's a person who's going to be interested in RoMa Craft and there's a kind of a critical mass of those guys at the given store, then that's a good indication that store is at least meets the basic criteria of the kind of store we want to work with. And then from that point, the store contacts us, hopefully through email or through our 800 number or some other professional method other than Instagram direct messages, right? and then that customer will start to engage us, and then at that point, Mike or John will start to interview them in the sense that, let me tell you about who we are. This is why you're hearing about us from your customers. This is the kind of products we make. This is how we produce cigars. This is how we deliver cigars. This is the ordering process. It's a little more engaged than with some manufacturers. Just have a lot of product, and we slowly kind of work through all the reasons why they wouldn't necessarily work out with us. And then hopefully once we launch them, then they're a good fit. And then we do a lot of work to help support them in the early months so that they are successful with us. Because at the end of the day, we want those. Our goal as a company is to try to get our product that we make to the people that want it,
Mm-hmm.
As efficiently as possible, so that it's getting to them fresh, high quality, and at the right price. So that's our selection process.
Okay.
Pretty much.
And when it comes to, because I've heard you talk about this a few times, as far as production numbers for the year. You try to keep a good handle on those production numbers for a lot of different reasons, but there's the demand can sometimes far outweigh the production abilities that you're either willing or able to keep up with. So when do you, how do you gauge when the right time is to make a move to say, okay, we're actually able to, in a quality manner, bump up production? What do you look for to gauge that?
Well, our production at the factory really is constrained by the space we have in our current facility. So Mike was just down there this week. Mike hasn't actually been down there since we hit kind of our peak production of 30,000 a week, a week. So, just the amount of tobacco that we are having to store, that we're being able to purchase and having to store, the finished goods, the actual finished cigars while they're aging. The facility itself limits us right now. What we do is, we kind of always targeted to be really successful at this 30,000 cigar a week, which is about 1.2 million cigars a year. And, it differs every year, but, that's pretty much, about 50% intemperance, either BAEC or Whiskey Rebellion. It's about 20% Cro-Magnon, about 15 to 20% Aquitaine, and 15 or 20% Neanderthal. And then the majority of our limited editions, with the exception of maybe Craft and Baca and Wonderlust, they all kind of fall into the different sizes within one of those brands. So it falls into those numbers. Overall, our limited edition stuff, our limited production stuff that we do every year, is about 15 to 20% of our overall production. If you include Craft and Wonderlust and Baca. If you just include kind of the limited sizes, it's less than about 7%. So, our production beyond that, in terms of where we what kinds of cigars we make, are within, for example, BA, or which within intemperance, whether we make BA, EC, or Whiskey Rebellion really is based on the wrapper, the timing of when the wrapper is in the factory against the production. And then, when we have production capacity because we don't have all the components to make something else, that's when we slip in projects like Baca and Wonderlust and those kinds of things, Craft. So, we generally get most of our wrapper towards the end of the year. Our heavy wrappers like Broadleaf and San Andreas, and so we really produce heavily Cro-Magnon Neanderthal in November, October, November, December. We sell it, in February, March, April, May. That's more heavily those kinds of cigars. Even though we do kind of try to ration it out throughout the year, it's kind of more seasonal. And then pretty much all through the year we make Aquitaine in the intemperance lines, and then in between those lulls of production is when we make the other things.
Okay.
But some years, for example, 3 years ago, we had a San Andreas limitation, so we made far less Neanderthal than we had previously. Last year, for example, or 2 years ago, we had a broadleaf limitation, so we only made about half as much as normal. Last year, 2019's broadleaf that we used last year, we actually had about twice as much as we would normally have. So we actually had 2 production cycles of broadleaf, which ended up us having twice as many Cro-Magnons as we normally have. But the truth is, and we say this all the time, we have about 70 different Vitolas in the different brands, 70 or 80, maybe it's up to 80 now. I haven't counted them recently, but we could make, and this is not an exaggeration, we could make 1 million Cro-Magnon craniums a year and sell all of them. We could make 1 million Neanderthal HNs and sell all of them. So, our demand is always going to be higher than our production. What you don't see us doing is you don't see us selling Cro-Magnon craniums and HNs for $20 just because we can, right? Our prices are really based on our underlying cost drivers and a fixed kind of profit margin. And because we have very low costs here in the States, and because we're very efficient all the way through, we make really good profit margins, and still sell the cigars at, probably $1, $2 less than we probably should sell them for in terms of the market, right?
Yeah.
But, we're not so much about trying to grow the business as much as we are about keeping the quality and keeping the all of the little pieces interacting the way that they're supposed to, and the people who really understand we don't, for example, we don't advertise, we don't do anything really other than one show we advertise for the Cigar Authority, the after show we do.
Yeah.
And really, that's kind of a discount function. It's a kind of a rebate function of the business we do with Two Guys, right? Really, it's not as much advertising as much as it's just that. So, we don't do anything to really create demand. We really focus on keeping 250, 300 really good retail partners managed, with good inventory and good back orders and good ordering, and making sure that the people who buy our product day in and day out can get it somewhere close. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Are there discussions or thoughts about possibly someday, whether it's sooner or a couple of years in the future, kind of moving up into a larger space, increasing production, things like that? Is that something you guys think is, because it's a timing thing that I would assume you guys really have to analyze closely and make sure that it's the right move if you're going to increase production. So is that something you guys talk about on a semi-regular basis?
Yeah, I mean, based on our experience now and our raw material inventory, and based on the talent the team we have, in the customer base we have, we could probably easily move to 2 million, 2.5 million cigars without really anyone noticing. It would really just mean shorter back order cycles. We wouldn't even necessarily probably even have to increase the number of retailers we have, to be honest. We could open up the amount we sell to CI and Famous and JR a little bit more, and we could eliminate the back orders, kind of the 3-month cycle we have with the brick and mortar retailers, and probably do 2.5 million cigars a year. Our discussions were, let's get past FDA, which was a big hurdle. The second one was, let's get the tobacco lined up, which Mike can tell you, every spare inch of the factory has a pile of quintales in it, just tons of tobacco. And then the next thing is to build our own new facility in Nicaragua, in a place where we can do it the way we want to do it, and also where it's still convenient for our existing employees to get to and from work, And then, once we have that extra space, which we need regardless of whether our production increases or not, then we can start a discussion about, do we add 2 more pair? Do we add 4 more pair? Which I think would be fairly easy to do. But without any huge bumps. But we have those discussions all the time.
Yeah.
I think the thing that people kind of overlook is it takes a lot of discipline to do it the way that we do it. And what I mean by that is, like, in the back of your mind, there's always this thought, is like, if you increase production, or if you did this, could you one, make more money? Could you one, make more cigars? How much is ego? How much of that is but one of the things that we set out at an early time when we kind of thought this through was, we could make a living, an honest living, at this scale, right? The advantage of the people who live in Nicaragua, obviously if they make a good chunk of money, they're not paying income tax like we pay income tax, right? So there's some advantages of having, your company structured in one way or the other. But when you look at what we do, you can manage the scale that we do. And when you start trying to increase and kind of grow, there are a lot of things that you have to kind of navigate through, right? So, for example, if we're not growing broadleaf, Connecticut broadleaf, right? So how if you're already having kind of troubles with that now, or San Andreas right now, how do you navigate those channels if you said, hey, I'm gonna scale the capacity, but then you don't have specific types of tobacco that you need to make the cigars that you would like to make, right? So, I mean, so in those conversations, it's a game of chess. It really is. And I think that people kind of overlook those. It's one thing to say, yeah, we should do this and let's go do it and not execute it. But I think, one of the things that you really kind of have to look at is, okay, what are the risks? What are what's the, pros and cons of doing those? And then, obviously, how do you mitigate those risks?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, like for example, this year, I don't think we've talked a lot about this, but Esteban has always had a little bit of a growing operation. So Esteban kind of grew up in Nicaragua in Fidel Olivas' organization, and specifically Lorena, and using Pueblo Nuevo, which is becoming more popular for everyone. But these farmers in Lorena, Esteban's been working with them for years, and then even after Fidel Olivas kind of stopped operations, he still kind of helped subsidize some of the crops in order to kind of keep a foot in the game, make a little bit of money on the side. Well, in the last year or so, Esteban's really expanded. He has another company outside of Nicosueño where he's a grower now. And so like this year, I think he's working on, I don't know, was it 2 manzana or 3 manzana of a crop of Esteli tobacco. So, pretty quickly, we're going to be in the position to where instead of going out and looking for Esteli tobacco every year all the time, and just buying, when we find the right tobacco, buying it, we're going to be in a position where we have a ton of it. And that being one of the most popular tobaccos in that region, being to what I think is the best Esteli tobacco in Regadillo, that tobacco then not only helps us kind of be able to double our size if we want to, because that's a main component that's limiting from a filler perspective, but it also gives us a lot of really high quality material that we can trade for small amounts of other things that we need. So if other people, for example, have Jalapa, like I was talking to Luciano, for example, they have a big growing operation in Pueblo Nuevo and Jalapa, and we use a little bit of both of those. But being able to trade Esteli tobacco for that, it changes a lot of dynamics for us. We've gone through different ways of doing San Andreas, but now, in fact, Raul, on behalf of Raul and us, was just in San Andreas, working with directly to the source in terms of because Noxa or Nicoprosa has stopped importing San Andreas, so now we're getting it directly from Mexico, and making sure that we get the same stuff the right way, cured the right way, fermented the right way, and then sent to us. We've switched from getting Arapiraca, and broadleaf in Esteli to getting it directly from Lancaster leaf to getting it directly from Brazil with the Schuster family helping us there. So over the 10 years that we've been doing this, we've really dug deep into the supply chain and gotten more capable in terms of sourcing the tobaccos that we need, the exact kinds of high quality tobaccos we need. And the part of that is that it's really expensive. It's a lot more expensive for us than it is, say, for a big operation, right? But at the same time, because we're so efficient all the way through the process, especially here on the sales and administrative side, we're able to be really competitive.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's the cigar business isn't all just sitting in lounges and smoking cigars with people and telling stories, right? It's more than anything, I would say, what we do is we manage a humongous supply chain that's all over the world, right? I mean, we use tobacco from Africa. I've recently spent a lot of time talking to the Marifels about getting that directly. In fact, I think we have some samples coming in this week from them. Really high quality tobacco, which means we can expand Baca, right? We have started looking at really heavy sun-grown Sumatra for a new line of cigars, and securing the supply chain for that, which actually starts happening about 2 years before you actually introduce a new product, right? You get the trademark and start sourcing the tobacco, and then about 2 years later, you start to see it, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of those things that we do constantly. I mean, that's what we do for a living. We don't just sit around and smoke cigars, even though it does seem like that sometimes.
We have a great viewer question.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
Yeah.
This one here?
Yep, that one there. So Paul asks, any chance of a Wonderlust or Baca Lancero?
Yeah. So with the change in the FDA, I don't know that we'll ever bring Wonderlust into the States for a lot of reasons. And I don't know if Baca will ever. Maybe if this thing with the Marifels works out, it'll be more. It'll be a broader. We still have a limitation on Hunter and filler for that blend that we have to solve. But we make Weaselitos in both of those, which means we bunch Lanceros in both of those cigars and then cut them in half and make Weaselitos.
Yeah.
So there already are per se Lanceros in both of those. We just haven't. Only we've smoked them. Right?
So it's just
So
they're basically half Lanceros, like 3.5 or 4 by 38.
yeah, the 3.5 by 38. So
Yeah.
Lanceros are one of those things. Like everybody loves to talk about them, but it's
This guy.
I am on a campaign to bring Lanceros back to where they should be.
Yeah, good luck with that. I mean, like our OM, the Neanderthal Lancero, is a miracle of cigar making. I mean, because we put 7 kinds of tobacco in a Lancero with the double Lajero from Pennsylvania, right? Which getting that cigar starts out at like a 46 or a 48, and then becomes a 38 through the Tabacchiato process. So there's no other way you could make a Lancero with that much tobacco. Which is why that cigar is so strong and complex for a Lancero. There's just really no comparison on the market. There really is not. I mean, the closest I would say would maybe be the La Flor Dominicana Double Lajero Lancero, which is just a beast as well. It's a lot of flavor and body, but it's a different kind of cigar than the Neanderthal. So we know how to make Lanceros. It's just there's not many people that smoke them.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I understand, when it comes to Cameroon for the Baca, the leaf sizing plays a factor too, if I remember right, for that particular type of tobacco that you would use for the Cameroon wrapper when it comes to a 7-inch long cigar. Does that play a factor as well? Yeah,
I mean, Ecuadorian Cameroon and Honduran Cameroon and other varietals of Cameroon seed tobacco are all fairly large, relative. But real African Cameroon, like the kind the Marifel sell, and the kind that we get previously from Gilbert Oliva, that kind of tobacco, especially the kind that's heavier and darker, is smaller leaves.
Yeah.
And so that's why when we, this year our Baca production is all the sizes, but we basically had to select out larger leaves from 3 years of tobacco in order to get enough large leaves to make just 250 boxes, for example, of the Toro. So it is limiting, but hopefully with these samples we're getting this week from the Marifels, there are larger ones, and it's just whether the texture and the color is right. Because Cameroon, like Ecuador, Connecticut, is not fermented. So whatever color it cures at is the color that you have. And we like, in fact, the only reason why we have Cameroon is because it's too dark for the projects that the original owner had it for. So we really like that kind of dark end of Cameroon. It's not necessarily as pretty, but it has a lot more strength and flavor.
And what people may not realize, if you didn't listen to our show on Saturday with Jeremiah, the Marifel farms, they only use and sell 5% of
for cigars,
for cigars, I should say, for premium cigars. 5% is what their yield is for premium cigars.
Yeah, the rest of it ends up in bobbins for machine-made cigars.
Yeah.
And that's just a crazy number to me.
So then if let's look at that 5%, just curious. So when you guys get bales of tobacco in the factory, then what type of percentage would you say on average is good enough for a wrapper leaf for the current production of Baca?
Well,
or other brands.
So we use Cameroon also as a binder.
Yeah.
So where we have been buying Cameroon is we've been buying it kind of at the tail end of someone else's production process, right? So these are the ones that are too small, too dark, whatever. And so that's how we've been able to buy it, is because, they make brand X, it's certain sizes, it's certain color, and then they yield out some. And, this is where when people say we only use the best tobacco, the best tobacco for the person who bought that Cameroon was the larger, lighter leaves. For us, the best tobacco is the smaller, darker ones, right? So when we get that in the past for Baco, the Cameroon, for example, when we were working on the project with Jack Tarano and we got the tobacco from Scandinavia, it was like 80% binder, in my opinion. I mean, that's how we judged it. So it was really hard to make something that, was even worth doing.
Yeah.
Now, Espinosa took that at La Zona and made the War Zone, and it won all kinds of awards and accolades. So that's just our opinion of that tobacco versus how they were able to use it, right? So I'm not saying it's good or bad or we had a better decision. It's just the way our factory worked with it. But by the time you get the tobacco from someone like Marifel, it's very specific to the color grade and the quality and the size that you want. So it's very high percentage ends up being exactly what you want. It's just your prices go up. The more specific you are on the sort, the higher the yield. So instead of getting 140 pounds that's 80% binder, but costs you $17 a pound, now you're getting 140 pounds that's 95% wrapper, and it costs you $58 a pound, right? So, the actual cost per wrapper doesn't change so much. It's really more about the yield.
Okay. So one of the things I'm curious about from you guys is when it comes to special editions or limited production stuff, I know that sometimes, and there are other companies that do this, a lot of companies that have, special editions, limited runs, things like that. So sometimes from what I've seen, limited production runs and special editions can really, they drive a lot of buzz and they can drive sales. They can sort of increase sort of consumer desire that in the end, after the limited run is sold out, it can sometimes even lead people to your regular production stuff, maybe if they weren't familiar with it before. So
that's not usually the way it happens, but
okay. So
but we just had this long conversation.
So
right, Mike?
Where is the fine line between consumer desire or consumer demand for, being one of the cool kids that got the limited stuff and the regular production stuff, and how do you guys gauge that?
Well, I think that obviously at the end of the day, right, you're always going to have core lines. So you have to, so if it's so let me back up. As a consumer, there was a shop in Houston. It was called Lone Star Tobacco. And this guy would have, vintage stuff. Like if you went and dug around, like you could find some really, really cool things that you just didn't see anymore, right? And what I'm talking like, you could go in and say, hey, do you have the Tony Brahani, Bahia Gold? And he'd be like, oh yeah, let me look down here. And he'd pull, kind of, dig around, he'd, pop it out, right? But every time that I would go into his store as a consumer, and I would kind of geek out over certain things, he would say, oh, you know what, since you got, a handful of this or some of that or whatever, you might appreciate it. And he would go up and, grab something from the top and go, you probably have never seen this before, but since you bought all this other stuff, if you want to get one of these, I'll sell you one of these, because I know he knew that I was a consumer, right? And then I would appreciate it, right? So obviously, like for me, my concept, or I think collectively, is that's how people should ought to treat, kind of the limited editions, the things that you don't necessarily see. Because at the end of the day, if you just throw it on the shelves and it just becomes kind of mushed in with all the other core line stuff, there's really no special about it. I mean, unless the bloggers and people are doing reviews on it or whatever, like it just kind of gets tucked away. Like that's kind of, what do you think about that, Skip? Like, is that?
Well, I mean, I'll give you a good example. When I was coming up as a cigar smoker, I kind of came up where Opus X and the Don Carlos and those things were always limited, no matter what. If a store had them, you were lucky, right? If they got that stuff in, if they got Don Carlos torpedoes in, or if they got number 2s or whatever, everything back then, anything good was limited. So especially getting good, there were the curly head Fuentes but even for me, like even the La Unica 400 Maduros would sell out. So, I would come in, buy a bundle, 2 bundles, a box. Every now and then, if I could afford it, I'd buy a handful of Fuentes. And then when a box of, say, for example, which was a unicorn at the time, like a bestseller, or the Hemingway work of art, or which I think was the bestseller, was like a little bit larger than a short story, and then there was like a barber pole short story, which I think was called the work of art. And there were all these kind of cigars that you heard existed, but you didn't really know. And when those came in, they went in the back. And then, Chad, the guy who owned the store, Emerson's in Virginia, he would say, hey, Skip, have you ever heard of this cigar? And I'd be like, yeah, I heard about it. I saw, Andrew Welch had a picture of, all those cigars in the Fuente alcove or whatever. He's like, hey, how would you like to have one? I'm like, sure. He's like, they're $15. I'm like, no, I'll take one, And then you smoke it and you realize, okay, it's cool. Back then you didn't really have an Instagram where you could take a picture of it or whatever, but it was cool. And maybe you kept it in your humidor for a little while, but then when you finally smoked it, you go, that was really an interesting experience, but it isn't that much greater than, I would rather just have a regular supply of short stories, right? Yeah. Or a regular supply of bestsellers. And the thing was, though, that I felt really appreciated as a customer, and also cool as a cigar geek, that I got to smoke something that nobody had really seen before. And a lot of times, if I got 2 of them, I would really kind of try to share one of them with a buddy of mine, and he would do the same for me. So, for us, the limited stuff we do, there's a practical reason why we do some of it. So, for example, if we're making 5x56s, we have 5x56s in every single line. We have it in ECBA, WR. We have it in Neanderthal now. We have it in Cro-Magnon Aquitaine. We have it in Baca. So the point is, the 56 ring gauge molds, if we're working, if we're only making 5,000 cigars a day, and there's 2 pairs of rollers or 3 pairs of rollers that are working on 56s, that's consumed all the 56 molds, and someone else is working on the 50 ring gauge perfecto molds, which we also have in every size, and someone else is using 46 for either anthropology or the 4x46. So what happens is every now and then there's an odd pair out where we don't have demand for other sizes, or we don't have wrapper of certain size, or the wrapper's too big. Like, for example, in Neanderthal, Mike was a part of this discussion this week. We've completed our production capacity, or our production order for all of Neanderthal except for HN, when we make 4,000 HNs a week, and we just can't keep up with it. But we had a bunch of really small San Andreas wrappers that were already deveined and that were already humidified. And so, Wilmer, our production manager, comes up to me and Mike and says, okay, can I make more SGPs? And we have a lot of SGPs actually already in the aging room, even though we have a lot on back order too. So I just know that, I don't want to end up in an excess capacity situation with SGP. So I said, okay, let's make more Hawks D's. Let's make more Weaselitos. Let's make more, you see what I'm saying is we try to figure out how we can use. And so we end up making those special size things a lot of times in order to consume larger wrappers or smaller wrappers, or because we need a production for a pair that doesn't have work, because all the molds that they otherwise would need are consumed.
Yeah.
So, but from a sales and perspective, if you're a guy that comes into the store and buys a handful of RoMas all the time, let's say, for example, you're a guy who buys BA all the time. Well, when boxes of Revenge come in, then it's a nice thing to have that's different. Or a box of Lonsdales. And Lonsdale may not be something you smoke all the time, but if you like the BA blend, that's something that's great, right? So, and actually, we allocate the limited sizes. Like, for example, if we have the Goodness, which is the 5x56 box press that comes out in EC, whenever that comes out, 250, 300 boxes, Mike and John will look at who bought EC in the last 2 quarters. And they'll call from the top of the list down until they're gone. So if you sell a lot of EC, you'll get the EC Limited. If you sell a lot of Whiskey Rebellion, you'll get the Tarred and Feathered, or whatever. If you sell a lot of Cro-Magnon, which is pretty much every customer, then you'll get a good shot at, say, Black Irish, right? But when 10 boxes or 5 boxes of Black Irish comes into, say, Cigar Hustler, he doesn't just sell them like that, make $800, $1,000 and go, oh boy, I really just made my year, right? He calls the guys that have been buying RoMa from him instead of from everybody else all year long and says, hey, how'd you like a 5-pack of Black Irish? If you put in an order, I could throw that in there,
Yeah.
And so that's the way that we try to, just the way I learned from the bestsellers and from the work of arts, because we definitely don't want to be one of those companies, and Mike can speak more to this perspective, is we definitely don't want to be one of those companies where the only thing anybody wants from us is, quote unquote, the limiteds. Because everything we make is limited. There's nothing different about the blend in a Cro-Magnon Venus than there is in a Cro-Magnon Knuckle Dragger. It's just a different size, right?
Yeah.
But I could name 5 or 6 brands where the only thing they really ever sell, like you couldn't name the core line from some of these companies because they have no core line. All they sell is the quick hit 10,000, 15,000, 20,000 cigar runs, and then people scoop those up, and half the time they end up being disappointed in them because they're not because they're not good, but because they're not the thing that they want. If you like Cro-Magnon, you're going to like that weird size in whatever Cro-Magnon we make.
Yeah. Well, or on the opposite side of that, I've seen people, and I've even experienced this myself, where a certain brand puts out so many limiteds, and I buy maybe a $5 of one particular limited, and I end up loving it. And then I honestly, as a consumer, I get a little upset knowing that this is not something I'm going to be able to get on a regular basis. If it becomes a cigar that I really enjoy, I would prefer to just be able to buy it, buy 1 box a quarter and keep it in my humidor regularly instead of knowing that it was a one and done.
Yeah. And I don't necessarily I don't like to chase beers, whiskeys, or cigars. I mean, I'm too busy chasing watches, so I don't have time to. I don't watches and handguns. We've moved on. We don't
Yeah.
have time to chase limited beers. But if there is a beer that's limited that I know I really really like, like Choco Vesa barrel aged, I try to have I try to find a contact that I know can get that and let them know that every time that comes out, we want a few, and then we do the same for them, right? But this whole calling around to 50 stores to find a cigar that's pretty much like maybe not even as good to you as the core line cigar, and then having people try to charge double or triple the MSRP in order for you to get it. To me, that really contaminates what the culture I grew up in terms of the cigar business. So we intentionally go out of our way not to try to create that kind of environment, even though sometimes it happens and we have no control over it.
Right.
Well, I'll give you the far extreme of that, right? So there was a couple of years ago when we got, I want to say about 150 boxes of Black Irish, right? So I took, I could have easily taken the top 10 or top 5 guys and said, hey, you can have, or even one customer and just said, here, take them. But I didn't. What I did was everyone who had an order going out in that shipment, I just allocated them a box and just sent it on its way and was like, hey, thank you for your business, and kind of left it at that.
And a few retailers actually said, I didn't order this. Why did you give this to me? And it's like, well, you can send it back. No problem.
Yeah, you send it back. But there was one particular that called me and says, what the fuck am I going to do with this one box? I've got 80 members, and was upset that it wasn't enough to kind of satisfy his shop, right? Like for me, on my perspective, it was kind of like, hey, this is just a, listen, I don't know what you do with it, right? Again, it goes back to the way I think as the way I grew up and the way consumers kind of dealt with, retailers, helped me out along my way. It wasn't, but because I couldn't send them, 80 to 150 boxes of one particular size or one cigar, like they were upset that I sent them one box, right? And it wasn't really like, maybe I didn't think it through, but it was really just kind of a gesture. It wasn't really anything, hey, this is kind of something unique and new, and holidays are coming, and whatever. And but to get a phone call where someone's like actually truly upset that you only sent them a box of something, kind of threw me, for a loop, right? Because I didn't even know how to respond to that, because it wasn't. There was no malicious, again, it was really kind of just from the heart, right?
Yeah.
And that customer was not right, by the way.
Yeah.
Or
that customer was not always right.
So
but my point is a lot of manufacturers will use the limited editions as a driving force to kind of help sell core line, right? And kind of, since Skip brought it up, right? So I mean, we'll talk about like William LaRue or Weller products, right? Like when people look at how much other things that they have to sell other than the bourbon, right? So that's Fireball, that's the Wheatley vodka, that's Buffalo Trace, that's all this other, like you could spend $1 million just in other non-Weller products just to get allocated a bottle of Weller 12 or a case of Weller 12 or a case of Eagle Rare or whatever. And it's always like from my perspective, it's always been like, okay, since you've done really well in the core line stuff, hey, you deserve to have some of this,
right,
kind of the cherry on top, right? Because this stuff is, it's going to sell and people are going to come in and look for it. But there's this movement in the industry right now where people are so focused on new, and it's been going on since 2007, 2008. But I think right now even more so because people are buying online, and social media and Instagram and Facebook have allowed it to get to this point to where it's like, hey, I got the whatever, this is what I'm smoking. But if you ask any of us, Skip 9 times out of 10 has an intrigue, BA intrigue in his hand. I either have Virtue or an Anthropology, Octane Anthropology in my hand, right? Like we smoke core line because
I could literally smoke whatever I want. I mean, and I'll say another thing about what Mike just said is, if you build your business to where you bring a ton of those kind of unicorn hunters in to buy cigars, and that becomes your cash cow. You basically are fucking yourself.
Mm-hmm.
What you want to do is you want to get the guy who smokes 2 cigars a day, 3 cigars a day, a box a month, whatever, who buys 25 singles a week or whatever. You want to get that guy on a regular basis walking into your place and getting the thing that he always wants.
Yeah.
And then you throw the cherry on top and say, hey, even if you don't smoke this, maybe trade it and get someone else excited about cigars, or maybe just for a special occasion, right? Or whatever. If you build your whole business on those kinds of customers, you will never have a challenge because you always have core products that you can present to them.
Right.
If you build it on the unicorn guy, he's involved in a relationship with 10 different retailers. And probably he's turning around and becoming your competition in the gray market or the black market, selling to other people for double what he paid you for it.
Oh, absolutely.
So basically, if that's the business you want to be in, if you want to be in the business of just the crazy, super hipster branded derivative bullshit cigar where everybody's calling around, it's great to have that $3,000 hit or that $4,000 hit, but that's like a sugar high. It's never going to last.
Right.
And what the fuck do I know? Right. But I've only been around this business for 30 years and seen who makes it and who doesn't.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, Matt has already done it, but since we don't have a plasma cutter in the studio, I'm going to show those who have complained about these bands how
simple life can be if you just
simple.
Yeah.
just do the right thing.
Watch.
I hope look at that.
That's so.
I hope the dojo guys are watching.
We love you, Jordan.
We love you, Jordan. We love you, Eric. But It's so simple.
Look at that.
And look, one piece. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. Nothing to see here. Please disperse.
No.
So another supply chain thing that's kind of funny is, so I specifically wanted that kind of paper, and it's very rarely used in the cigar business. It's used really commonly. It's called wine paper because it's used for wine labels very commonly. And we actually use it not only for our labels, but also for our insert files and also for our little brand tags on the outside of the box. And we're the only people in SLE who use that paper. And I don't know there's anyone in Dominican that uses it either. So it has to come in these huge rolls. So Cigar Rings has a ton of that, and we never have to worry about running out of it.
Because nobody wants it.
Yeah, exactly. So, but the downside of it is that when you put a little bit of glue on it and you hold it for a few seconds, which they do, it's very porous. So it really takes the vegetable glue and really creates a very strong bond.
Yeah.
The challenge with that, the positive thing is what I'll tell you is you will almost never see glue actually on tobacco of our cigars.
Correct.
Because they don't have to use a lot of vegetable glue. They use very small amount.
Yeah.
So you never see the band sticking to the cigar. But if you're in if you're in the habit of normally just kind of peeling it off like a easy stick label, you're going to be disappointed because it's very hard to, especially as dense as our cigars are. There's not enough sponginess to squeeze the cigar in order to get the label on your finger underneath it.
Yeah.
So a lot of people have learned that the hard way, and I get at least 5 messages a week saying, what kind of glue do you use? Why do you? But it goes back to our cigars are really meant for people who smoke a lot of cigars.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you'll either learn or you'll move on to a product that's better suited to your level of experience.
Another viewer question real quick is at current levels of production, how long can you produce Baca if the Marifel deal doesn't go through?
We could produce it every year. Actually, the wrapper is not the limiting factor. The limiting factor for us, the most limiting factor, is the 2 types of Honduran tobacco we use. because the people who make really good high-end Honduran tobacco do not like to sell it. Nestor Plasencia, as nice as he is, as great as our relationship is, he says, yeah. And then when you talk to the people at the factory, it's like, no. and then Christian says, fuck off. And then as good as my relationship was with Christian, he says, fuck off. And then, we go tell Raul, hey, stop making Christian cigars until he sells us some filler. And then, there's that. And then, of course, Christian's dad's like, sure, I'll sell you some. And then you drive up and you put it in the back of a truck, and then you have to smuggle it across on, it's not, that's the most limiting factor. I mean, there's a lot of Honduran tobacco out there. There's just not a lot of really, really good Honduran tobacco, is the case with tobacco in general. Yeah. There's no shortage of tobacco. There is always a shortage of good tobacco.
Good tobacco. Yeah. So just for everybody out there, I fired up my second cigar, the Fomorian.
That's a brave move.
It's a brave move. This is from, I'm pretty sure this is from the original production run, and I love it. I think it's very good. I'm one of those weirdos that likes Candela. So
I think it's one of the best Candelas ever made, but that's just me.
And not all Candelas are equal.
Right.
Well, that one doesn't taste like a Candela, which is why it's good.
That's right.
Right. Again, we wait for the darkest Candela. It comes from Noxa, where they make a ton of Candela cigars. I got an echo now.
No, it's all right.
But they make a lot of Candela cigars, and the darkest tobacco, actually we use that. And then another interesting thing about the Fomorian is the fresher it is, the better it is.
Yeah, it's. I will say that this one being, I don't know, when did the Fomorian first come out? 4 years ago? 5 years ago?
2014, I think we made the first one for DC Tweet Up.
Yeah. So, it definitely doesn't have that twang anymore, but I'm okay with that. It's still
it's Ecuador, Connecticut.
Yeah.
Right. So it probably tastes now at this point more like Ecuador, Connecticut than Candela.
Yeah.
Especially if it's in the top layer of the box and it's gives us a lot of UV exposure.
I got a unicorn of a unicorn.
Oh, let's
so while they were down there, they were making the HN, and so I asked them to make me the HN blend with the Candela wrapper over it. So I don't know if even Skip has had this one. So they didn't have a lot of Candela, so I had them make this one. So I'm gonna let this one dry out a little bit for about 30 days or so, maybe a little bit longer, and then smoke that. See how that does.
Yeah, nice. Mike spent the week walking around the production floor going, has Skip ever had this? Hey, make me one of these.
Well, and Skip, I got to say that Garrett and I brought our flavor wheels with us.
Nice.
We've got, so I'm getting notes of animal oils.
Yep.
And
if you were out and you had a fire.
Polished furniture. I'm just looking at all the things that are on this wheel. Polished furniture.
Essence of fir.
Yeah, essence of fir. Rhubarb.
I don't even know what rhubarb tastes like, to be honest.
Hummus.
Isn't that a pie? Rhubarb pie? Isn't that a thing?
Rhubarb pie, yeah.
Well, rhubarb it grows everywhere in the upper Midwest.
Yeah, it's this nasty looking weed that people cut the roots off or cut off the stalks and put a shit ton of sugar on it, and it tastes fantastic.
Here's so I apparently I touched a lot of feelings this week.
there were a lot of feels.
Right. Which is nothing new for me. But here's the point I'm making, and I'm not even being critical of like the hyper specific flavor. No, I always think it's really kind of funny, and it's definitely entertaining when Jonathan from the Cigar Authority says, he'll say something like, have you ever had whatever those chocolate covered cherries? Okay, so you open the box, you set the cherries aside, and then you smell the bottom of the plastic cover. And it's like, and he'll say stuff like that, right? So
not that, but this other thing. Right?
Yeah, but this other thing, yeah. So So that's entertaining to me. I mean, if that's really what he tastes and he's just trying to describe something he's tasting, and especially if you can get into the head of somebody else and go, "Oh yeah, I taste it too." But here's the thing about flavor descriptions. And I was listening to a podcast actually 2 days ago, and they were talking about a cigar that I'm really interested in trying. And I'll tell you what podcast and what cigar it was. It was the Hot Ticket. Who I those guys are hilarious.
I love that.
Outside of their fascination with scatological things, like this there was no poop references in this week's. There was some vomit talk, which was nice.
Yeah.
But I think back to Corey and where he was 3 years ago, and if he heard what I heard in the 5 minutes of this episode, where he was talking about Danny's cigar, and I haven't tried Danny's new cigar. I'm really excited to try it. And I really wanted to get their take because they're very direct and about their. If they like it, they like it. If they don't like it, they tell you they don't like it. So they loved it. But when he started describing, everything from strong to sweet to herbal to whatever to creamy to da 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 da, and I'm like, okay, you've put so much on the plate there. I don't really have a good sense of what it is it tastes like, so I'm just gonna have to try it myself anyway, right?
Yeah.
So my point in the post was to say, and I gave the example of the nuts, right? Let's say you had never eaten a pecan or a cashew, right? But you were generally familiar with the concept of nuts.
Yeah.
And I said, there's these two handfuls of nuts, and you can only have one. Which do you want? Because I'm going to eat the other. And you say, well, tell me the difference between the two. And I said, I kind of said this in the post, where one is kind of, woody. It has like kind of the same kind of flavor that you get from the smell of the shell. It's very influenced by the shell. It's got a kind of a gritty mouthfeel to it. It's really more chewy than it is crunchy. And, that's a pecan. And then on the other hand, you have one that's kind of also chewy instead of crunchy. It's oily. It's a little sweet in a weird way. And it's also very savory, right? And then you chose one. And I said, well, I'm going to give you one of the two. I'm not going to tell you which one. If from tasting the thing that I give you, you can go, oh, that's a pecan. Because based on the way you described it, that's what that is. If I'd given you the other one, you go, oh, that's a cashew, because you described it in a way that lets me. So my point is, if, Sean was in tobacco school this week. And so, you have to deprogram people away from this idea of becoming a master sommelier of tobacco, right? And you have to say, look, only you have your taste buds. And at the end of the day, you have to be able, a year from now, when someone puts a leaf of tobacco in front of you, you have to be able to recall something like, oh, that was oily, that was, savory, that was chewy. This must be a cashew. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Yeah.
So, or this is, salty. This is a little bit crunchy. This must be a peanut. Or, you follow what I'm saying?
Yep.
So. And also, if you're trying to discern a flavor in tobacco that for example, if you were if they had said about this Dominican-made cigar that it tasted a little kind of a moldy, musty kind of taste to it, I would have known exactly what tobacco was in it. If they would have said it had a grassy hay kind of thing, and it has Dominican tobacco, I kind of know what that is. I have a pretty good idea what that is, because I know that those descriptors match with a specific kind of. It's either San Vicente or Pelo de Oro, or it's you see what I'm saying?
Yep.
Yeah.
But if you just said it's real heavy and it's has a kind of a spiciness to it, like a kind of a harshness or a spiciness to it, and a heaviness to it, and the cigar has Nicaraguan tobacco, I'm like, okay, that's got Condega or that's got Esteli, right? Or if it's kind of herbal and it's kind of sweet, or maybe it's Ometepe, or maybe it's you see what I'm saying? I could start narrowing down based on words like that. But when you say things like, whatever, dank cardboard, what you're really saying is it's not very well fermented, right?
Yeah.
And, when you say things like, you're not doing. There's definitely some utility in people who are reviewing cigars, because maybe if I have a budget where I can only buy 5 cigars a week, and there's 10 new cigars on the market, if you start with some basic taste descriptors like, oh, it's got this musty, moldy kind of kind of overtone to it, I know I don't like those kind of cigars, so that one immediately goes off my list.
Yeah.
But if you say it has a natural sweetness to it, or a spiciness to it, or a heaviness to it, that may be something I really key in on, so that's going to go on my list, right? So when the flavor descriptions that you're putting out there have utility that either inform a buying decision or help to educate a consumer about the types of things that they like, and what that correlates to in terms of types of tobacco, you're not teaching people, like McTavish said, to taste. You're basically teaching people categories of tobacco flavors, and there's really only so many, right? And they're not related to food, and they're related to the 5 senses, savory, spicy, salty, sweet, sour,
Bitter.
right?
Yep.
Bitter.
Yeah.
And so, like, Arapiraca is bitter. If you like the bitterness in espresso, which I can use as a correlation, then you're probably going to find something in that wrapper that you like, especially if you like it based with something heavy. But if you don't like, if you absolutely hate that flavor, like espresso bitterness, then you're not going to like Arapiraca, right?
Yeah.
So that's something that's a flavor note that has some utility. It has some usefulness.
Yeah.
It's not this pretentious exercise of who's got the best palate, because I can tell you, I don't have the best palate in the world. Jose Blanco, probably Luciano, has a much better capability, almost to an kind of a physical deformity, X-Men kind of way of tasting stuff.
100%.
But guess what? I always tell Jose Blanco, let's assume that you're not bullshitting us, and you can taste things in the nth degree level of frequency of flavors. That's like being able to hear things that only dogs can hear. And the average cigar smoker is never going to appreciate the small nuances of what it is you're trying to blend to, right? But me, I taste cigars like an average cigar smoker. I tend to be able to pick up a lot of different nuances in heavier tobaccos. So where someone who doesn't really smoke heavier tobaccos a lot may be overwhelmed by the heaviness, so that they can't kind of have a distinct kind of spectrum of flavors, I do well in that spectrum.
Yep.
Whereas Mike does a lot better than me in picking up the nuances in milder cigars. I don't know that maybe Mike does have a better biological ability to taste than I do, but Mike has never described a flavor to me in these bullshit terms, because it has no utility. If I'm trying to describe to Mike something in terms of a blending process, which we do sometimes at a distance, like I'll send cigars or I'll leave cigars, and then 3 months after I'm gone, we're smoking them at the same time. We don't use language like reviewers use. We use language like tobacco people use, right? Which is either in the form of the 5, 6 flavors. It's in the form of describing it in the terms of another kind of tobacco we know, with adjustments, right? Or it's in terms of how that tobacco plays in the blend. Is it a heavy tobacco? Is it a bright tobacco? Is it something that tastes good by itself, and really you're trying to build nuances around it or complexity around it? But, that's my whole point. When I got to that section of the podcast, it's like I completely tuned out. I'm like, I came here to hear an honest opinion on this cigar, which I received, which is they loved it. So it's definitely worth trying. But in terms of does it taste like Henderson Ventura's other cigars? What kind of Dominican tobacco does it have in it in terms of what can I expect? Those kinds of things I didn't hear. I heard a lot of things, fancy, colorful words. And that's not taking anything away from the Hot Ticket podcast, because I consume that podcast as well as many other ones, probably as many as anybody.
Yeah.
But to me, that's where you hit the 30-second skip button, where you're, okay, bullshit. Okay, let's get back to the real stuff.
Yeah.
Well, and I think a lot of, I think the majority of cigar smokers are thumbs up, thumbs down kind of people. They either like it or they don't. And I think a lot of cigar smokers, especially newer people to cigar smoking, they want to be that super taster. They want to be able to say, this tastes, like, salty nuts, or, whatever.
But do you know why that is? The only reason why that is because a wine magazine publisher created that standard in the cigar business. Before 1994, 1996, not one single master blender in the cigar world, Benji, Eladio, none of them, not a single one of them spoke in terms of wine terms, in terms of food terms, in terms of these bullshit terms. None of them, not a single one. They spoke in terms of texture. They spoke in terms of density. They spoke in terms of body and strength. They spoke in terms of sweetness and floral aromas. They did not speak in terms of black pepper, white pepper, red pepper, crushed red pepper, turmeric. They didn't speak in those terms.
Thank
And
you
they
for
didn't have
the
to.
term
And they
right,
were
right.
still masters. So you're right that there's a go, no go for most consumers. But you have to give them the information that helps them make the decision to invest $10 or $15.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Like, should I smoke this cigar? The answer is yes. Unless you don't smoke cigars. Every cigar, if you have the time and you know a little bit about it, you should always try it, because you might love it and you might hate it. But either way, you learn something about your taste, and then you know what not to buy in the future.
Yeah.
So then the next time you say, should I smoke this? The answer is, well, okay, should I smoke Cro-Magnon? Okay, do you like, what do you normally smoke? Do you like Liga Privati? Do you like La Flor Dominicana? Do you like, Tricky Traca? Then you're probably going to like Cro-Magnon. If you don't like any of those, you're probably not going to like it. So, that's just, that at least has utility.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm doing a thing.
So I grabbed this out of my humor. This was from the pre-release of the when you made the Mode 5 Vitola of the Cro-Magnon back in 2013 or something like that.
Yeah, that came up. That actually came up in my memories not too long ago. The first shipment of Aquitaine Mode 5s.
And I had one each left of that and this Fomorian, and I just set them on the desk here and I said, pick one. So we're firing these up as number 2 cigars.
Yeah, Aquitaine never. I've never had one, because we have only 10 years, but I've never had an Aquitaine that lost an inch of flavor. We did smoke a Lonsdale at the factory that was about 8 years old the other day, and it was really muted unless you retro held it.
Yeah. Well, and the Lancero, I know it's not officially a Lancero, but of the Aquitaine, although they're not old, they haven't been around long enough for them to really have a lot of age on them. But I would think that over 5 years or more, they're probably gonna, mellow out a little bit and lose some of that depth. But it's still kind of moot, because it's still going to smoke properly. It's still going to have all the flavor and texture characteristics that somebody would expect out of it.
Yeah, those cigars that have really heavy fillers, they they have longer staying power. It's because the tobacco, it just naturally has a lot of flavor and texture, and they're fermented over a long time in the first place. So it's not like one of these deals where you're getting kind of a little bit under fermented tobacco that has this hit of harshness that seems like strength, and then it just goes away.
Yeah. So let's talk about Weasel Fest.
All right.
So last year, last year is what it is. 2020 happened, and we're past it. Weasel Fest was supposed to happen, and unfortunately it had to get canceled along with pretty much everything else in the world. So tell us about Weasel Fest 21 and what you guys have lined up and how people can get involved.
So Weasel Fest was originally to celebrate our 10-year anniversary. It was in Memorial Day weekend of 2020. Before we even got too deep into the planning, COVID really forced us to push it out. So we moved it to Labor Day thinking, oh, of course, by Labor Day, this whole COVID thing is going to be done and over with. But by the time Labor Day came around, we were in like the second surge, and the People's Republic of Austin was locked down like like Portland, and the rest of California. So but by the time we got up to the September one, we really thought we were going to be able to do it, and we'd already sold tickets, and we'd already lined up and had contracts with all the bands and the food providers. And so when we canceled September, a lot of people had actually purchased tickets. So we had sold about 300 tickets, and we ended up giving people three options. Option one was to just move your ticket to Memorial Day weekend of the next year. Option two was to take two of the catadors in exchange for your ticket. And then option three was to get a partial refund after you'd already gotten the Weasel packs and everything. So we had about 150 people choose option one, about 90 people choose option two, and then about 15 or 20 people choose option three. So this year we've waited to the last possible minute to put the ticket portal up because of two reasons. One, we had to reconfirm and book all the artists again. And actually, last year we ended up giving them a large part of the deposit to them, regardless of what happened, because they were all hurting as well. But that bought us a little goodwill. Most of them, or almost all of them, in fact, except for maybe a couple of the beer vendors, have decided to come back this year for sure. So what's going to happen is tomorrow or the next day, probably tomorrow, the portal will open up for the 150 people who chose option one. So if you chose option one, you'll be able to log in. You'll be able to book a new ticket for this year. It'll go into your cart, and then you'll be able to use your confirmation number from last year, which we'll give to you as a coupon that takes 100% of the ticket price off. So last year the tickets were $250. This year I think they're $275. But you will also have the ability to upgrade to a VIP, and the portal will tell you what VIP means. It's kind of more unlimited food and drink. It's access to the headquarters during the event. It's access to our beer collection and our bourbon collection. And it's also, we have a special thing happening with Staccato, which is one of the premier firearm companies here in Austin or in the world. And they're going to do some training on Friday before Weasel Fest, and we're actually going to go to the one of the coolest shooting ranges in the world together on Sunday, and all your ammo, everything's paid for. So that comes with VIP. Then what will happen is by next Friday, if you chose option 2 or 3 of last year, we'll give you early access to the portal so that you can have the opportunity to buy a ticket. And then by next week, we are going to open up the portal to any new ticket buyers, and we'll be able to sell tickets until they're sold out. We're only going to be able to do it because of the COVID restrictions. We can only do about 300. So here's the problem: the city of Austin still has not approved our permits. We got past the health and safety portion of the permit review, which is the hardest hurdle from a COVID perspective. But there's still kind of like, bureaucrats in the rest of the city government that may throw a wrench in the works. It's unlikely, but it's still possible. But either way, we're going to open it up. You'll be able to buy the tickets, upgrade the tickets, or just, cash in last year's ticket. And then you'll also be able to buy the catadors. And then this year we're only doing one Weasel pack, but it's kind of more stuff. It's more heavy duty. And that is coming probably 2 weeks before the event in the middle of May.
So one of the things that Skip, you ought to talk to him about that I think a lot of people don't really kind of understand is this is a concert, an all-day concert music venue.
Music festival, yeah.
Right? That allows you to drink and smoke So it's not like, you know, I think a lot of people are really, have been to like cigar events, like where there's a lot of cigar manufacturers and they kind of go around, they trick or treat, they put their bag out and they get their free stuff and there's some sales kind of going on and whatever. This is really kind of focused on the quality bands. I mean, Scarface is coming from the Ghetto Boys and several other people that are playing. So the music portion of this is not like what you would have at like your typical, you know, Cigar Fest, or not, and I can't even really say Cigar Festival because I think
it's more like South by Southwest or Austin City Limits on a small scale. I mean, just to give you some idea, at 300 attendees, we're spending about $700 a ticket. So when you add in the food, we're getting Valentina's Tex-Mex and Style Switch Barbecue. We're getting Texas Sotol, which is kind of like a tequila type thing, and also Garrison's bourbon. We're getting, we hope, 512 and Independence Brewing, which are two big Austin breweries. So you're going to get at least, you know, 2 beers, a whiskey, a tequila, a Sotol, 2 meals. You get Superfonicos, Scarface, Third Root, and then you get our DJ from Las Vegas who does, you know, $100,000 shows in Vegas. He's going to be here for all 12 hours. And then, you know, we do have a special release cigar. We have a cigar event at Habana House the Friday night before the event, which is going to be a really big event, you know, about a half a mile from here, which is more of a kind of a classic cigar event. But, you know, we're spending about $700 a ticket, and the actual price of the ticket is, you know, less than $300. So you're getting, in terms of the value of what you're getting, at least what it cost us, you're getting, you know, just the sound equipment for the bands and the stage is something like $50,000. We're like $100,000, I think, into just paying the artist to play the, you know, a concert.
Yeah.
So, you know, the food and stuff is also high, you know, top. I mean, if you guys have ever been to our IPSPR party or anything we've ever done, we don't do it half-assed. So it really, it's more of a customer appreciation event than it is a cigar event.
Right.
You know, we're having a lot of our retailers fly in. You know, it's not going to be focused around us moving a bunch of cigars. We want to get the sales of the cigars out of the way early on. I mean, if we sell, you know, 1,500 boxes of Catadors at $100, we're going to recoup about 3/4 of it. If with the ticket price, we recoup the other 25%. So between the ticket price and the cigar sales, it's about break even for us. In terms of the $210,000. But, you know, so it's not a money-making thing. It's really more of a customer appreciation event where we figured out how can we do a world-class thing without, you know, going broke.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, look, I mean, you know, if you come and you don't like it, and then we just want to invite you next year.
They frozen?
I froze them on that one.
Yeah, they're in awe. They're like, holy
They're
shit,
in awe.
they're like, that's a great party. Yeah, as of right now, Scarface will be at Weasel Fest. I think it looks like Mike asked if Scarface is going to be there.
Yeah. How does the host get frozen?
I don't know. And they were making fun of your Nicaraguan internet.
Exactly. Maybe the Chauvin verdict came in Minneapolis and burned down the internet infrastructure. So anyway, that's Weasel Fest. It's a lot of work. I know that.
Yeah. So I wonder if somebody could respond if they can at least hear us, and if it's just the host that is frozen. No one has said anything. So, were there any other topics that you wanted to kind of get to before they wrap this up?
I want to do the guess that number, or the number de los muertos or whatever. That's my favorite segment.
Yeah.
I can't see from the comments if people can still hear us. Sean
Wilson
can
said,
hear us.
yeah. That dude gets all over, man.
Yeah.
He's eastbound and down.
That's right. I don't know. This is usually where Mike Stefankevich has something to add.
You know, I would also so the staccato thing I think is going to be it's going to be pretty amazing. Like I think that that's going to blow a lot of people away. I think that obviously they're going to get to shoot some of the products that really you don't really see. Like I think I think the tuxedo and some of the things that they've been kind of working on, like I think that they want to bring some of those things out and kind of get some exposure to some of our guys. So that's going to be some really kind of, the ability to shoot some guns that you probably wouldn't get to shoot anywhere else. So that's going to be really cool.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 handguns.
Yeah.
And ammo.
And trained by some of the best guys, right? So
yeah.
So we'll see. So that's a 4-hour deal. So I think that's I think we have it slated from 1 to 5, and that will also be catered. So we're gonna have one of the food vendors come out and you probably just do some tacos, something easy that they can do out there. So
yeah. He said they'll be back in a minute, so let's just talk amongst ourselves, Mike.
Like the last couple minutes, yeah. So, what would you take away from the trip in Nicaragua? What were some of the things that? I mean, obviously you're back into Austin. So, what has when you're leaving the factory and you're going to be gone for a few weeks? Like, what are some of the things as you kind of like how do you relinquish some of the what goes to your mind when you're trying to shut down? Like how do you process that? Like, that's a good question.
Well, so there's like key projects that I have to get done before I leave. So for the big ones for me that are coming up are the Collective Sovereign, which is going in the Weasel Pack. That's a cigar we did before, but we had to change the box and do a few other things. So there's that, and then we had to get the craft box off and going. We've got the Grand Perfectos coming out in the boxes. Last year's Catador are going to be individual boxes this year. And then we have, so we have those kinds of projects. But I mean, like as you can see at the factory, really for me, when I'm back in the factory, it's really about keeping the little things in between the lines, right?
Right.
And so so these guys are back. So when I leave the factory, having left before COVID, I hadn't left the factory for more than a month outside of a holiday in like 7 years. So having been here for 10 months during COVID, both Arlen and I learned a lot of ways to do the jobs that we do from remotely, right? But of course, when we didn't work on any new projects, we didn't work on anything really limited. We had all the tobacco already purchased, so there wasn't a whole lot for me to do in those 10 months that were real critical things. This time, leaving to come here for Weasel Fest for 6 weeks, there's a lot of big things happening in the next month. So, our last couple of days at the factory, as you witnessed, was really kind of full days of just checking all the boxes on the little projects with everybody.
So how excited are you on the new craft box? I mean, that to be able to kind of draw it out and put your master penmanship to a paper and sketch it out, and then turn around and kind of give it off to Freddie and the team to come back within a day or two to get a sample. Like how cool is that?
Well, Matt, you guys have seen the craft project over the years, right? It's always a really so just to give you an idea, our average cigar, by the time we prepare the tobacco to the time the cigar kind of goes into a box, it takes about 4 or 5 months from the time you start deveining and humidifying the wrapper to the time the box gets shipped to Austin. It takes about 4 or 5 months. The buying of that tobacco sometimes is a year or 2 years before that. But with craft, just what size it's going to be, how it's going to look, how we're going to elaborate it takes years. So, we're already kind of have ideas for next year's Catador, next year's craft, the craft 2 years from now. And the box aspect of it, always has to be a little bit more elaborate. And every year it seems like we get a little bit more and more elaborate with it. Because, it's an expensive cigar. An average pair in the factory can make between 300 and 400 cigars a day. And then the people who are working on craft, it's always, because of the way we produce it, it's always ends up being that they can produce like 100 to 200 a day. So it takes a lot longer. It takes, instead of taking, a couple of weeks to make enough cigars that are going to last us a couple of months, it takes us a couple of months for cigars, 2 or 3 months to make cigars that are going to last us one day, right? So it takes a lot more kind of process to get that project out. But I'm excited about it. I'm excited about it being over and then getting to work on next year's.
Well, sorry about the tech difficulties. Thank you guys for keeping the show going while we were on temporary hiatus. That's one of the benefits of this platform that we use, is even if my computer takes a dump like it just did, the servers that host it still keep rolling. So
I just kicked over and interviewed, so it's all good. You didn't,
Mike, you did great.
Yeah.
I listened to the whole thing. Thanks for hanging in there, guys. Really appreciate it. And we had one question before we get to the fun stuff. And let's real quick talk about TPE and PCA. What does RoMa Craft have in store or not in store for trade shows?
So that's Mike's area. I'll just say this to start with. Every year we sell the same amount of cigars for the last 4 or 5 years. The challenge for us is we usually sell about 20% of our annual production at IPCPR or PCA. But the challenge is sometimes it takes us till January till we can fulfill some of that. So where we always end up finding ourselves is spending $150,000 to go to the trade show, which is great because we get to meet with a lot of our customers we don't normally see. And also, we have the party, which is great, just in terms of having some fellowship with other people in the industry. But the challenge is we always overbook ourselves with a trade show, especially when people expect discounts, which we don't normally do. So what we found last year from not having the trade show is that it doesn't really affect our bottom line. I mean, it doesn't affect our sales at all, but it does affect our profitability. We become a lot more profitable. So this year, instead of having a sales increase, we decided not to spend the money on the trade show. The flip side of that is we really made the decision based on the fact that the feedback from our customers is that they're not going. So if the retailers aren't going to be there, there's no reason for us to be there. So next year that might change. Either way, we're still members of PCA and we still contribute. And, if they call us and say they need help with something, we're definitely willing to step up and do that. It doesn't make sense for us from a capacity perspective, from a financial perspective, or from a customer relationship perspective to be there if our customers aren't going to be there.
Yeah, I think the kind of net conversations that I've had with people across the United States is, it's kind of mixed, right? So obviously the states like, Arizona, Texas, Florida, Georgia have kind of been opened and remain open and functioned really without really missing a beat. And I'm sure those guys will go. But then you look at California, Michigan, New York, some of these other states kind of in these other areas that have had a lot more restrictions, they're just now kind of getting the ability to kind of open up, 25, 50%, right? California, especially Michigan. And so what ends up happening is that, yeah, they've been able to sell products, but are they really going to need to come in and stroke big orders to get a little bit of a discount? They may go just because they want to get out of their state and just kind of get something new. So that may be, the attendance may kind of normalize, but I don't necessarily think that people are going to necessarily, go there to buy deals or to load up on products. And so we can do a lot of stuff virtually. right? And a lot of the times, it's actually, if you looked at kind of the timing of the two trade shows, originally you had one in January, and then you had the other one kind of in the summertime. So it was kind of like one kind of acted like, the TAA, and the fact that, people kind of got it in January, and they could kind of take care of the ordering that they need to do, kind of January for the first two quarters, and then kind of, reassess where they are kind of going in July, kind of finishing out the year. Well, when they kind of mushed them side by side, I mean, I think they're only like 6 weeks apart. I don't, now you got to pick one or the other. There's no sense in, you may get some people who go to both, but it's really, it's a timing kind of thing. And I don't necessarily know if there's really any advantage from one or the other. Right. Yeah. And now if you have a head shop or you're doing all kinds of other things other than tobacco, cigars, premium cigars, then you may go to one show over the other. I don't know. But realistically, I think for us is, hey, we're going to put this money into the Weasel Fest, and we're going to have retailers kind of coming into this. We can hammer out and do a lot of the things that we need to do for account reviews. I can sneak off and spend, 20, 30 minutes with each one of those kind of guys and say, listen, let's go ahead and bang this out. And it's already off their plate, and they're going to go focus on the other things. And we got to spend some one-on-one time and kind of review. Realistically, we spend the majority of our time really giving a lot of our accounts where they are in their spends, what's coming in, on a bi-weekly kind of conversation based on the production stuff that's being slated in. So there's really, historically the trade show was always kind of thought of, instead of kind of spending a lot of money and flying into New York and going to New Jersey and Delaware and Pennsylvania, Philly, those types of markets, you could have everybody kind of come to you and just kind of see everybody, within 3 or 4 days at one trade show. So there was an advantage to saying, okay, we could spend $150,000, $225,000, in 4 days and really bang out, a lot of those kind of conversations without having to travel to those areas. Where, again, with people kind of being more receptive to doing video calls and these types of things, you can really, do a lot of your business virtually and still have the same output and still not have to, spend the money traveling. So we'll kind of see how it goes. I mean, I think that's kind of the one of the things about us is we're always willing to kind of, look at, pros and cons of both and then, and making a decision, right? I think Skip said it the other day that if, we get to a point where people saying, hey, we went to the trade show and you weren't there and we were looking forward to seeing you, how does that, does it really, but you have to factor in all the things. And really, I think this year will be a little, it's going to be a little interesting to see like what the turnout really looks like. So we'll see.
Yeah. And I'll say this, and I don't think we beat this horse to death, but it's no secret that the trade show itself was challenged even before COVID.
Right.
Yep.
It was there was this, identity crisis about whether they wanted to be an expo or a trade show, whether it was going to be open to consumers or not open to consumers. There was all this infighting, big guys leaving, people saying that they aren't going. Our decision has nothing to do with that. Our decision has 100% to do with just one simple thing, which is the reason why we spend the money to be at the trade show is as a service to our retailers and to benefit the relationship we have with our retailers. There will no doubt be a few retailers that go that are going to be disappointed that we're not there. There's definitely going to be other people in the industry that are disappointed that we aren't there to do our party that we do. But overall, I felt like, not having the PCA, not having the trade show last year gave us the opportunity to figure out a new way to fund the really important activities of the PCA outside of the trade show and to make the trade show, to reinvent it. And I don't see that we've really done that. It feels like what I'm hearing a lot is we've gone away from the consumer idea. A lot of people feel like the mission of the PCA is over because we quote unquote won with the FDA. I don't think that's true. I feel like a lot of people, for the reasons they didn't go before, they have even more reasons not to go now. The people who had big booths are going to go down to smaller booths. And my prediction is, and I hope this isn't the case, but my prediction is that the PCA won't find the kind of revenue generation out of the trade show that they found in previous years, and the ROI is going to be even worse for the exhibitors than it has been in previous years, and the value for the retailer is not going to be as good as it has been in previous years for even the ones who still come. So it's going to put us even further down the road of not even having a trade show than if we had taken the time during COVID to reinvent what it is. So part of it is we kind of just really wanted to stay out of all that politics. If if the PCA made from us 10, 12,000 of our 140,000 that we spent, and Scott called me and said, "Hey, I really could use that $10,000 because we have this very specific thing that we're trying to do," we would really strongly consider stepping up to do that, even if they never sent a congratulatory email to Half Wheel. But we would absolutely, as a member of the community, step up and do our part for that. I have never gotten one of those calls, so for what it's worth. But I can tell you this, that all the people who go to the trade show, all the bloggers are going to have their criticisms or their positive things to say after. And I know for us, we're focused on the positive things they're going to say after Weasel Fest and about, our virtual, we had a lot of great feedback from last year. We probably we did more during our virtual trade show that we did here from the office than we did the year before at the trade show.
Wow.
So
it's about return on investment.
Yeah. And we talked to Scott Pierce on the show, a month ago.
Yep.
And we were very straightforward with him, telling him that we're not sure if we're going to go, because of ROI, as a small new media company covering the industry, if the ROI is not there, we don't have much ad revenue to, be throwing around, and that's fine. We're a new company. We get that. That's the way it is. But TPE basically makes it free for us to go. I mean,
and I think I've heard that the PCA is trying to do a little bit of that, best practices from the TPE, but we'll see. You guys should come to Weasel Fest. That's at the end of May. Believe me, you'll get value for the experience. And whether you go to PCA or not, I want to just say again, we really are big supporters of the mission of PCA.
Yeah. Yes.
Yep.
And absolutely. I'm a big supporter of the people at PCA. Aaron, Scott, Josh, I think they're all doing a very good job with little resources. And especially, when they got furloughed and they still stuck in there and they're still 100% committed to the mission. And if it wasn't for the PCA, we would have been in a lot of trouble, I think, from perspective of the FDA. Just the work that we all did collectively over the last 5 or 6 years in terms of spreading the differentiation message about premium cigars, I think has paid dividends finally.
Yeah.
And a lot of the resources for that came from the trade show. But I think, it's almost 100 years old, and there's not very many. Honestly, there's not very many trade group shows that are going to survive the post-COVID period. I don't believe.
Right.
I think that era is over.
Yeah.
Well,
So is it?
I think it's time.
Is it time? All right.
Time.
It is time for this week's Numero de los Muertos. And as always, Numero de los Muertos is brought to us by our friends at Smoke Inn. All right, Numero de los Muertos brought to you by Smoke Inn. Garrett, what do you have for us this week?
Well, this week I've got a bigger number.
All right.
Than you normally get. So this week, the number is 780 people a year die because of this in the U.S.
All right. In the U.S., every year, 780 people die from this. All right. As always, viewers, if you guys have guesses, leave them in the comments. Mike and Skip, we're going to guess along here and try to figure this out.
Is it vaccine complications?
It is not. This is a 3-year average.
I try to go with something that's in the news.
Yeah, I get it.
Is it mass shootings?
It is not.
Is it white people killed by police?
It is not.
It is not.
Okay, those were my 3 guesses.
Those are edgy.
So 3-year average, 780 per year.
Yep. So 2015 to 2018 was the most recent CDC number on this.
Okay, so it's an illness.
No.
Oh, it's not an illness.
Mm-mm.
Oh, because CDC tracks mortality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I got you.
All right.
What was the number? What was the number again? 780.
Yes.
780.
So we already did autoerotic asphyxiation. So
I got that for you. Yep.
yeah. So it can't be that one.
Would they be considered workplace accidents?
Yes, they are.
Ooh.
All right. So it's some type of workplace accident.
Ooh.
780 deaths.
Is it forklift injuries?
It is not. That's a great guess.
No forklifts. Okay.
Not saying you're close.
Yeah.
I like that.
Does it involve some kind of equipment in the workplace?
It can.
Okay.
Is it commonly indoors or outdoors?
Yes.
Both. Okay.
Is it cooking related?
It is not.
Okay.
Any guesses from the peanut gallery?
Not
Nothing.
yet. No. Usually we've got people lined up.
Usually it's me.
Yeah.
It's a true story.
And the guess is always
I love
autoerotic asphyxiation.
Yeah, but I shut that down now.
Yeah.
Yeah. That number's a lot higher than people thought.
It's true.
That was a high number.
It was higher than I thought.
Yeah.
So
this is a great guess from a viewer. Chris Brown, hanging signs over trade show booths.
I don't know. It's still worth the money, even if that's true.
Yeah.
Even if it's that risky, it's still worth the money.
So
is it the dudes that fall over the boats and the fishing boat guys?
Oh no.
Drown? Oh, okay.
No, I did do that one though.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
That's one of the top 10 most dangerous jobs.
It is.
Yeah.
All right.
Did we say our vehicles involved?
They can be.
They can be.
All right. First hint is I'm going to give you a region. So the biggest numbers come from Texas, Oklahoma, and Wyoming.
Okay. So it's
I have
maybe
a guess.
oil and gas related.
It is not.
Oh, see, that's where I was going was oil work.
Animal husbandry.
You're getting real close.
Oh, no way, really?
Yeah.
Ooh, because those are all cattle regions.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in Oklahoma, it's sheep, but
it's not like exotic animals like Tiger King
No,
shit, is
no,
it?
no.
Okay.
No.
ooh,
Because that's Florida. That's
I like the way you think, though, Matt.
yeah. You got to go for the crazies.
Tyler has got to have a good guess here.
We haven't seen Tyler chime in a little bit.
Yeah.
No.
Probably throwing bags.
Yeah, he's throwing bags. Is it related to livestock?
Yes.
Okay.
Rodeo, dude, the clowns from the rodeo.
780. That'd be a lot of rodeos.
That'd be a lot of rodeo clowns.
You never know. There's a lot of bulls out there. I don't know. It could be.
That's true.
Well, the ones that are classically trained in France, like buckets.
Mark says stampedes. Is it stampedes?
It can be.
It can be.
So Skip he kind of said the term that I was looking for, but it wasn't an answer.
Cattle?
It's basically cattle farming. So whether you're, it's either a cattle hand or, cattle farming in general between the equipment. Let's see here. I got all of the
little known fact. For 2 years in high school, I worked on a ranch in Amarillo.
Oh yeah.
Oh, did you?
And we did rounding up the new steers, cutting the nuts. We did butchering. We did the whole deal. Reaching the glove into the cow vagina.
Oh.
We did the whole deal.
Did you ever have any close calls with, dangerous situations?
Yeah, I think the most people ever got hurt was kind of common was people getting stuck between like the fence and where they're trying to get the cow into like a chute.
Yep.
And then getting behind the gate or whatever and getting kind of crushed by that.
So here are all the different kind of subcategories that have taken lives. Everything from feeding, moving animals to different pens, loading animals on truck or trailer,
right?
Artificial insemination, hoof care, dehorning, cleaning animals, roping. Let's see here, giving vaccinations,
castrating,
pulling teeth, ear tagging, milking, branding, shoeing, which is hoof care, delivery of newborns, yep, that's kind of the nuts and bolts of the subcategory.
That's crazy.
Isn't that nuts? 780 a year.
That's a lot, and mainly just in those 3 states.
Yeah.
Wow.
How many police officers are killed a year?
In the United States?
Yeah, I figured somebody would have that metric with all the news.
Yeah.
Really, I'm sure somebody does.
Yeah.
I bet it's lower than 780.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, it's got to be way lower than that. Way lower.
Yeah. And there's probably a lot more police than there are cowboys.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to go on a limb and say yes.
That's a dying art.
But on a positive note, a cow's not going to shoot you on a traffic stop.
There you go.
Yep.
That is correct. So that was a good one.
Thank you.
That was good. Good guess, Skip. I'm giving Skip the win on that one. That was a good
Animal husbandry was that would have given me the Family Feud,
Yeah, absolutely. The ding. Yeah, it would have been close enough. Absolutely.
So that was this week's Numero de los Muertos. All right, let's move into the quick lightning rounds. So Skip, the last time we had you on, we did we had the original lightning round questions, but we have some new ones that we're going to go through. But I'm going to start with Mike on this one. So Mike, if you could bring back any fashion trend from the past, what would it be?
Z Cavaricis.
Z Cavarici.
With the pockets in the front, those I was too poor back in the day. I couldn't afford them. So
same here. I had the Kmart brand, like
absolutely
our Cavabucci's or whatever they were called.
From the Chess King.
Yeah, from the Chess Gang.
Air Mall.
Air Mall with my knockoff. I couldn't even afford British Knights, so I had the knockoff BKs. Skip, what about you? If you could bring back a fashion trend,
I'm gonna say low-rise jeans for women with flat abdomens. Because the high-rise jean thing, I just don't get it.
Which is coming back. It's back.
Yeah.
Down here, you see a lot of girls rocking the bell bottoms.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
But the high-rise jeans don't really do any favors for the fupa.
I agree. I have to agree. It's like a mom jean revolution.
Right.
It really is.
All right, Skip, you're going to be first on this one. Who was your? Did you have a favorite when you were a kid or a teenager? Did you have a favorite celebrity crush?
Oh yeah, man. We all had the poster of Farrah Fawcett, and then later it kind of got replaced by Heather Thomas from The Fall Guy.
From The Fall Guy, I had that poster, the Heather Thomas poster.
Yeah, but yeah. That was probably my celebrity crush. But my all-time favorite celebrity crush is Jennifer Connelly.
Oh my gosh, dude!
You're preaching to the choir for this guy here.
Oh,
that's my.
She might be number one on my list of all time.
I think she's on my number one list.
And even at 50 years old, she's absolutely stunning.
Smoking hot.
Yeah.
Elizabeth Shue is my number one all time.
Cruel Summer.
Oh,
the Karate Kid. But you know when her role in the Boys, kind of ruined that one for me.
I get that.
Yeah, I could see that.
But the Saint,
she was great in the Saint.
Oh.
Mike, what about you? What when you were a teenager, what celebrity were you crushing on?
Crush, probably Tiffany Amber Thiessen from Saved by the Bell. So
90210 a little bit.
Yeah.
Just so you know, Mike is only 4 years younger than me, and we went from Farrah Fawcett to Saved by the Bell.
Dude, that was she was the hottest thing going around. I mean,
we went from 1977 to 1997 in just like that.
Yeah, we did.
Right.
That was the first. I mean, that's something I really think of right now. So I'm going with that.
That's a great choice.
No shame in that at all.
All right, so Mike, if you could add any person's face to Mount Rushmore, it could be anybody at all. They don't have to be a president or a founding father or whatever. Anybody's face to Mount Rushmore, who would it be? And you can't say Skip Martin.
No, it would be. it would have to be. We were talking about this the other day. We were Geronimo, right? Like I think Geronimo.
Love it.
Would have, yeah.
Nice. What about you, Skip?
I would have to stay with the theme of the presidents, and I would say Eisenhower.
Oh, okay. Very nice.
Tricky Dick. No.
Ike.
Ike. I like Ike.
Yeah.
I like Ike.
Yeah, that's a very good choice. War hero, president. I dig it.
He was brilliant too.
All right, let's talk about this week's Notable Smokable. And as always, Notable Smokable is brought to us by our friends at Ace Prime. Ace Prime, notable cigars, notable passion, notable purpose. So, Skip, you've been through this before, but Mike, each week we just discuss one cigar that we've smoked recently that was interesting to us. It could be something that's been on the market forever that we just revisited for the first time in many years, or it could be something brand new that we just tried. So, Mike, do you have anything that you tried recently that kind of caught your interest?
There was some stuff that I smoked down in Nicaragua that was pretty interesting, but it's not really released. Something that I would probably say something that I always kind of tend to go back to. We have some kind of in the closet back there that I picked up somewhere along the way, but there's some old Camacho Liberties or something that are back there. Like the original release,
The
like
Diploma.
Super old. The Diploma. Those are.
Oh,
yeah. I always enjoy those. I always like to revisit those.
Still strong.
Yeah, those were really good, really strong. Even, I mean, those have been.
Those are about 15 years old, the ones we have.
Nice. Very nice. So, Skip, what did you have for a notable this week that you can think of?
Raul gave a cigar that he blended to Sean that I smoked before that took from Sean and smoked. And I don't know if it's something he's working on for Saka or if it's something he's working on for himself, but it was really, really good.
Yeah.
You know, the thing is that him and Esteban have very similar kind of trends of the way they work with tobacco. And so, you know, whenever Raul works on something, it's always good.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Yeah, it's got to be fun to get a chance to try some of those just quick, you know, maybe one-off sort of blends that the guys in the factory put together.
Yeah, and Luciano gave us something at the Intercontinental too, right before. I think it was on Cigar Dojo last week, and right after he got off, he had a cigar that he had blended with Ernie Carrillo. While Ernie was in Esteli, and it was him and Ernie had blended it, and it was only a couple days old, but it was really good.
You know, while I was down in the factory, I got a hold of the Guaymaro Petite Corona, little box press that
The Rothschild.
The Rothschild.
Yeah.
Holy shit, that dude! People sleep on that cigar. That cigar is so good.
That is a great cigar.
You know, if you like the flavor, but don't necessarily like the depth of HN, I think that's like, it's like right in that wheelhouse. Like if you like everything about HN, but you just, you know, it's just too kind of bold and too much for you, the Guaymaro is like right there. I mean, that's a cigar. I can smoke that every day, all day, just like I smoke Octane Apologies. Like that's such a good cigar.
Yeah. Yeah. So Garrett, what was your notable this week?
My notable was the Alma Fuerte Lancero.
Oh yeah,
Plasencia.
Yeah,
I had recommended that to a friend, and I watched his face melt, and then I had thought, I haven't had that in a while, and damn it, that's a good cigar.
Yeah, you know, that's one that I don't get a ton of strength from, but I really do like the flavor profile on it.
It's not strong, but a lot of great flavors in that cigar.
Yeah, that's one of those cigars when you're smoking it, you don't really think too much of it when you light it up. And then you'll be halfway through and go, man, what am I smoking? This is good.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
So mine, I revisited one that I fell in love with years ago, and that's the Joel Sherman 75th celebration from you know, the old Nat Sherman brand, and really super mild cigar, but a lot there's just a lot there. Even though it's mild, it's enjoyable to smoke the whole way through. And
was that made by Manolo?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of a characteristic of that era of Casada cigars where, you know, they just have good, medium, great taste in tobacco.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's just a blend I enjoy a lot. So I was grateful to find some of those because they're pretty much gone. So to give our viewers and listeners an idea of some stuff we have coming up soon, next week on the 26th, we're going to talk to Cynthia Fuente. And then on May 3rd, we have a very different guest. And his name is Jason Ledane, and he is actually he's a card expert. He's a magician and a card expert, but he's also a cigar guy, and kind of a different type of guest that we're going to have on the show. But I think it'll be interesting for us to have a little bit of fun with, you know, some conversations outside of the cigar world, but also, you know, talk about his experience as a cigar smoker and what he enjoys as well. Then we will be at TPE covering the show live on from May 12th through the 14th, and then following that, the following
Weaselfest.
Then we hope to be at Weaselfest.
Yeah.
And then May 17th, Indiana Ortez will be on the show, who is newly announced as the new director of operations at Mombacho Cigars. And
that's great news.
Yeah,
you know, we were initially the distributors for Mombacho in the U.S.
Yeah,
and then also I've known Indiana now for 5 or 6 years, and it's great to see her kind of moving into that, and also Jesse.
Yeah, and Jesse Flores is now the art director and director of design for the company, and they're definitely making big moves right now, and it's exciting to see what that company's doing. And Indiana's got her family's got such a great history in premium tobacco, so excited to hear that story. So guys, give us a final plug for dates on Weasel Fest and where they can find the portal.
So we will release that over the next 2 weeks. We'll release to the option 1 and option 2 and option 3 people this week, and then next week the portal should be available to I think it's weaselfest.cigarweasel.com is the portal address. It'll be on the poster that we post on social media. But we'll make sure. I think it's actually a link on our Instagram, our RoMa Craft Instagram right now.
Okay.
It's just not active for people yet.
And I know there were some questions about whether people could transfer their tickets or not. Have you made a decision on that?
Yeah, like I said before, what'll happen is, like, let's say you have a ticket, so you have a confirmation number from last year. You'll get an email saying, "Here's your confirmation number." If you have a buddy that wants to go, you'll be able to give him the coupon code or your confirmation number, and he can register like normal, and it'll just discount in the checkout.
Great.
Excellent. Well, Mike and Skip, thank you guys so much for being on the show tonight. We appreciate hearing about your recent time in Nicaragua and Weasel Fest and all the great stuff coming up soon for RoMa Craft. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, guys.
All right. For all the viewers and listeners, as always, thank you guys so much for watching and listening. Take just a minute, if you would, and make sure to subscribe to all the channels on Facebook, on YouTube, and email us on the website if you guys have questions for us. Follow us on social media at HBT Cigar. And as always, until we see you next time, burn cigars,
Not bridges.
See you guys. Thanks.
Guys.